What's going on there, YouTube? Welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so we have now reached a point where we're gonna jump back into X Factor, but we're no longer going to talk about the original X Factor team, Cyclops, Jean Grey, Iceman, Beast, and Archangel. It's now time for a new team to rise up because the old team, they had rejoined the X-Men once you had Charles Xavier come back to Earth and help the X-Men take down the Shadow King. And so with those events happening, well, that leaves room for new characters to take up the mantle of the name X Factor. And so getting into X Factor issue number 71, being the first chapter for today's video, we actually pick up with Polaris, the daughter of Magneto, but also have the same ability as her father. We're also being introduced to Strong Guy as well. Now, Strong Guy has the ability to absorb kinetic energy and turn that energy as a way to help him grow in size, but to also enhance his strength as well. And we also have Jamie Madrox, the guy who has the ability to clone himself. Now, we do learn early on that this new X Factor team is being put together by the government, and I'll explain more here in a moment, but you did have all three characters realize that there's going to be other members to the team, especially one who's very close to Polaris, and that would be Havoc, Alex Summers. Because remember, in the early days of Marvel Comics, those two characters dated one another, but a lot of different things had happened over time, especially the idea that Havoc kind of moved on from Polaris and fell in love with Madeline Pryor, the ex-wife to his brother Cyclops. But that took place back in X-Men Inferno. And now the question is, can these two characters actually get back together? Will it actually work out? But either way, we now jump over to Havoc. Now, when it comes to Havoc, we have not really seen him since the Extinction Agenda crossover, where you had the X-Men, X Factor, and also the New Mutants being able to work together to kind of free that country. Because in Genosha, you had the actual government there using mutants as slaves. And so Havoc stayed behind to begin the process of turning that country around and really begin to build different buildings where mutants in that country can call home, like apartment complexes, and the list goes on. Now, he is confronted by Val Cooper. Now, the Val, she believes that what he's doing right now is kind of like building ghettos in Genosha. Like, yes, you're trying to help out your people, but at the same time, you're putting them all in one particular place in this country. Either way, when it comes to Val Cooper, she does work alongside with the president, and she's kind of in charge of overwatching all superpower beings in the government. Now, early on in our coverage over the X-Men, she was the leader or kind of like the supervisor for a team called Freedom Force. And Freedom Force was a team of old X-Men villains, really the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants that were led by Mystique, who began to work for the government as a way to be forgiven for their crimes. The problem was they got caught in some legal issues on their last mission, and so Freedom Force was officially cut off. Now, with that being said, the president still wants to have a superhero team full of mutants that's working alongside with the government as a way to build a relationship between the government and the mutant race. But she wants Havoc to lead the X Factor team. Now, for Havoc, he does not want to do that at all. For him, he's kind of done being a hero. But then out of nowhere, you have a girder about to fall right on top of Val Cooper. Now, Havoc at first does try to save her, but he is stopped by Wolfbane. And Wolfbane also stayed behind to help rebuild Genosha. But she does save Havoc. But Havoc is able to use his power to save Val Cooper. Now, after doing that, she says, look, that shows me that you can be a great leader. The way you act just at instant moments shows me that you know what to do when things get tough. And so he leaves with her, but also so does Wolfbane. But now we jump over to Quicksilver. Now, Quicksilver does arrive in Washington, D.C. thanks to Lockjaw, who has the ability to teleport to almost anywhere he wants to go. Either way, when it comes to Quicksilver, the reason why he had arrived in Washington is because he's looking for X Factor. He got word that a new team is coming together and he needs their help. And so he's trying to ask different people in the area like, hey, where can I find the office of X Factor? But right now, every single person in that area is freaking out. And the reason why? Because there is a bomb threat. And so you have Quicksilver being able to use his ability to run fast to find the bomb very quickly and make sure it does not go off by disarming it. But getting back over to Havoc, we do see that he had arrived back in Washington, D.C. along with Wolfbane and Val Cooper. Now, this is Val trying to convince Havoc to actually join the team. The man has not said yes just yet, but he's kind of like, I don't know if I actually want to do this or not. But that is the moment you have Charles Xavier and Cyclops walk into the room. Now, this takes place right before X-Men number 1, 1992, before we begin to see the gold and blue team when it comes to X-Men comics. Either way, this is now Charles saying, hey, Alex, let's talk because I actually need you to be on this team for a very good reason. Now, for Charles Xavier, the reason why he wants Havoc and X Factor to come together is because, well, Charles realized at this point in time in Marvel Comics, the mutant race are being very heavily watched by the world. Because let's not forget, we just had the whole extension agenda in Genosha. We also had America try to pass 2 different laws, but one law was basically all about mutants. The idea that mutants should be registered. And lately, you had different organizations popping up left and right trying to get rid of the mutant race. The Reavers and also the Right, and the list goes on. And so for Charles, he said, listen, the reason why we need this government mutant team is to begin to build relations with the American government, but to also show the world that we mutants can actually work alongside with human people, that we can actually work together, but to also bring down all the hatred right now towards the mutant race and to hopefully fix things, but to protect our race from any future harm. And so just like that, it's Havoc saying, fine, I'll join this new team they are putting together. Now we're going to skip forward a tad bit where we actually see that Quicksilver have made it over to the new base of X Factor. Now, when he does arrive, you have Polaris kind of tell us that Quicksilver does look a tad bit older than he usually did in the past. And the reason why? Because he's aging up. And here's the reason why. Somebody had messed with his powers. Anytime you have Quicksilver use a huge portion of his power, he will now begin to age up at a faster rate. And so it does seem like somebody is coming after Quicksilver. The problem is he has no idea who is trying to come after him. All he got was a postcard where someone said, I did this to you. I planned this a long time ago to get back at you. And so for our heroes, they're kind of concerned about what in the world is going on with Quicksilver. Now, while you have Polaris, Strong Guy, Jamie, and also Quicksilver talking to one another, well, then you have Havoc and Wolfbane walk into the room to kind of say, okay, Havoc has now agreed to join X Factor. Now we have a new team here. Let's see what kind of adventures they are going to go on. And really, their first adventure is one heck of a story because we now jump over to Jimmy Madrox going over to an apartment that he's currently watching right now for some of his friends. And so while being there, he does hear a knock at the door. And when he goes over to the door, well, apparently his guest wanted to kill him and actually does by shooting him over and over again. And our Jamie goes out the window and crashes right in front of the crowd of people outside the actual complex building. And so now we jump into X Factor issue number 72, where we actually pick up with Well, a bunch of reporters right now reporting what just happened to Jamie because he did just fall out of the window and crash right in front of the building, but he was already dead before he hit the ground because he was shot and killed earlier. Either way, you do have one reporter known as Ariel O'Hara reporting about what just happened at this building and showing off the dead body of Jamie. Now, the reason why we're focusing on this right here, because it is a way for X Factor to find out what just happened to Jamie. Because while you have Val Cooper at the base just watching TV, she sees what happened to Jamie and she begins to, well, freak out because now one of her new team members was just killed off just like that in the early stages of this team. And so she tells Quicksilver, we have to tell the rest of the team what just happened. Now, the rest of the X Factor team are just kind of chilling at the moment, but we also do learn a tad bit about the backstory of Strong Guy. You see, apparently he was not very close to his family, his parents, but they were killed off when a satellite had crushed them, which honestly is a messed up death. But after they had died, he was able to get money from the company who made the satellite, and he was living a good life until he had to pay back all the bad investments that his parents had made over the years. Now, he was able to make some more money by working for a rock star known as Lila Cheney. And really, we saw her in the early days of our coverage over X-Men comics. Either way, it's kind of him trying to tell us a tad bit about his origin. But then you have Val Cooper and Quicksilver arrive to inform the team that, hey guys, Jamie is dead. Like, they're right now reporting about how he was shot and killed and crashed in front of the building that he was staying at. Now, at first, for our heroes, they don't really believe in the idea that Jamie could be dead, but they do run over to the crime scene and they do find the dead body of Jamie. Like, yeah, he is officially dead. But while you have our heroes looking over his body, well, that is the moment you have another Jamie appear. He's kind of like, hey guys, so that is me, but that is a clone of me that was killed off. Now, for a brief moment, we are also being introduced to a new character known as Professor Vic Chalker. Now, this is kind of like one of those background characters we're going to see here and there throughout our coverage over X Factor. But when it comes to the Professor, his main goal, like many other people, is to get rid of the mutant race. And that's all we know about this character. Now, getting back over to X Factor, you do have Jamie explain what went down at the end of the last chapter. He tells us that really, when he heard that knock at the door, he knew it was too late for a guest. And so what he did was he sent a copy to answer the door. And of course, when they did, they got shot and killed by the shooter. Now, he did send another copy to chase after the shooter, but the shooter got away. Now, for Jamie, he said, listen, the reason why I didn't come to you guys because I thought the shooter would still be around. When I saw you guys, I knew, okay, you know what? Let me go ahead and inform them what exactly went down. Now, things do get a tad bit sad for Jamie. And the reason why, because usually he's able to reabsorb his clones back into himself. But the problem is he cannot reabsorb the dead clone right now on the ground. And he does get very upset about the idea of not being able to do that. And really, we're going to talk more about that later on in this chapter as well. Now, you do have Val Cooper trying her best to actually talk to the different reporters about what happened to Jamie. But while doing that, we actually shift our focus over to two characters who are currently hiding in the shadows. Now, these two characters, they're watching live television of Val Cooper reporting about what happened to Jamie. Now, these two guys, we do learn that they are responsible for what happened to Jamie, but also what happened to Quicksilver as well. Now, one of the guys, he is growing impatient about the idea of taking down X Factor, but the other guy tells him, you need to wait. Wait for the right time for us to achieve our goal. But now we can kind of focus on the different members of X Factor. Now, at first, you do have the team actually talking about the idea of doing a press conference to show off the team to the entire world, to say, hey guys, look, we have a new superhero team and they are called X Factor. Now, before they're able to do that, they want to make sure that every single member on the team has a good enough code name for themselves on different missions. But I want to shift our focus over to Polaris and also Havoc because, like I said earlier, these two characters used to date in the early days of X-Men comics, but a lot of different things went down in a way where they were unable to be together anymore. For example, Polaris had her whole entire body being controlled by a character known as Malice. And then because of that, Havoc began to move away and kind of fall in love with Madeline Pryor. Now, with those two factors now being gone, it does leave the door open for these two characters to actually get back together once again. But now we have to shift our focus over to Jamie Madrox. And when we do, it's really more Jamie kind of expressing the idea that he's kind of concerned about the dead body of one of his copies. Because now he's beginning to realize that maybe there's a possibility that those copies out there that he creates have their own kind of soul. And so when they die, do they go to heaven? Do they go to hell? Where do they actually go? He feels bad about the idea that now his copies might actually be their own person, but they're getting killed off when he tries to use them against different enemies. But getting back over to Polaris and also Havoc, we do see the two characters being able to work together to save an entire family from a burning building. And really, it kind of shows that these two characters are beginning the process of trying to get back together for once. But here's the thing, while you have Havoc and Polaris kissing one another, they have no idea that they're being watched by somebody else. And that somebody seems to be Wolfbane. And the question is right now, why is she so upset when Polaris calls Havoc her lover? Now, the ending of the second chapter continues the whole idea of who had murdered Jamie Madrox earlier, or who tried to kill him off. Because while you have our heroes doing their press conference and answering all the different kinds of questions, well, that is when they are confronted by another Jamie. And he says, the one you have up there right now is the fake. I'm the real one. He's a copy of me. And now everyone is wondering in the possibility, could that be actually true? But as we dive into X Factor issue number 73, we actually pick up with Jamie versus Jamie. Now, here's the thing. Jamie is very similar to Strong Guy when it comes to kinetic energy, as the way how his powers truly work. You see, every single time Jamie is able to absorb kinetic energy, he is then able to make a copy of himself. And that is really important because while you have both Jamies fighting against one another, well, every single punch, they're making a copy of each other. And so right now we have all these different copies just popping out left and right. Now, for the rest of X Factor, they do know a tad bit about how Jamie powers truly work. That if you are able to knock out the main one, then most likely all the other copies will go away. But the problem is, though, when you have our heroes knock out all the copies, you still have two left. And the question is right now, which one is the real one? Now, for the Jamie we saw in the earlier chapters, he truly believes that the other Jamie is actually a dark side of him that he had locked away to kind of make sure those dark thoughts or that dark part of him never comes out again. And he believes that dark part of him was able to break away and become its own actual person. Now, the other Jamie we saw at the very end of the last chapter, he believed the same thing, but the other way around, that he believes our Jamie is actually a dark part of him that had broke away. Either way, you do have both Jamies get knocked out. Now, like I said earlier, if you knock out the main one, all the copies go away. But the problem is, both of them still there at the moment. And so you have our hero say, you know what? let's go ahead and take him back to our base to hopefully get everything figured out. Now, the whole idea of Jamie going up against, well, Jamie is actually a huge problem. And here's the reason why, because that battle took place at the press conference that X Factor was gonna have as a way to introduce a new government team full of mutants. And so with that happening, it makes the mutant race look bad, because let's not forget, like Charles Xavier said earlier, there are a lot of eyes on the mutant race, and we now have more and more groups popping up believing that mutants are actually trouble. And so when you have this kind of incident happen, it gives the humans another reason to believe that mutants are actually a problem. And so you had that same reporter from earlier saying, look, this is another mutant incident. And you have Strong Guy get very upset because other heroes out there have very similar incidents, but you have the public forgive them very easily. The Avengers, the Fantastic Four, the Defenders, and the list goes on. But if they are a mutant team, oh, it's a huge problem. And this is Strong Guy saying enough is enough. And also, he hates the idea of even being called a mutant. Now, we do get another page where we do see Professor Vic Chalker trying to get something going as a way to hunt down the mutant race, that he was able to build some kind of armor suit. We do learn that maybe Vic is not all the way okay in the head, because apparently he made the armor in the wrong way where he is unable to actually get inside the actual suit. Now, back at the base for X Factor, they're trying their best to figure out how in the world they're going to see who is actually the real Jamie here. Like right now, they have no way of seeing who's the fake one and who is the real one. And really, they asked Wolfbane to kind of use her ability of smell to kind of figure out who is the actual real one. But not even her can see who is actually the real one. And so now our heroes say, you know what? Let's go ahead and give both Jamies a polygraph. With that polygraph, we should be able to learn who is actually the real Jamie here at the moment. But at the end of the very last page for the third and final chapter for today's video, we actually see our mysterious character being really happy about the idea of going after Quicksilver, going after Jamie, but now going after Strong Guy next. And we'll actually cover that in the next video. And so with that being said, please leave me a like down below and subscribe. Also, if you have any suggestions on books I should read, well, please let me know in the comments below, because you never know, your suggestion could be a future video down the road. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.